Every garden should have herbs. They're easy to grow, good for you, and the beneficial insects love them. If you live in a hot climate, you might think it's challenging, but you can grow herbs that thrive in the heat. And in today's video, I'll show you how. I'm Angela from Growing in the Garden. My garden's in Mesa, Arizona. I want to help you succeed even if you're gardening in tough conditions. Perennial herbs will be around for a while, so dedicate part of a bed or a spot to those herbs. Learn the needs of each of the plants. Some like full sun, but others benefit from afternoon shade, especially during hot summers. It's worth figuring out the best spot for each one so they'll be successful in your garden. If you have a spot with native soil and full sun, plant lavender and rosemary. They will thrive. These herbs will need regular water to get established, but limited water and definitely not soggy conditions once they're growing well. Don't prune much or overwater. This allows plants to go into summer dormancy, which is their survival mode. They aren't going to look their best, and that's okay. If you have afternoon shade, native soil, and regular water, plant lemongrass and bay laurel. This lemongrass is about 4 years old and has thrived with this afternoon shade spot. If you find the right location for bay laurel, you're going to end up with a tree. Some herbs can become invasive, so they do best in a container with afternoon shade. That would be things like oregano, mint, and lemon balm. Choose a large container so it can stay in one spot for years. This oregano has grown happily here for the last 5 years. If you have a raised bed with good soil, regular water, and afternoon shade, many perennial herbs will grow happily. You can dedicate an entire bed to herbs like I've done here, or plant them in the corners of your raised beds. They will thrive. Plant thyme, sage, garlic chives, stevia, savory, and lemon verbena in these spots. Annual herbs are easy to add and grow well in most areas of your garden. Save a spot or two in each raised bed. Add annuals there. Annual herbs are either cool season or warm season. Here are some that grow best during the cooler season. Parsley, fennel, lovage, dill, cilantro, chamomile, borage. They all prefer cooler weather. There's fewer herbs that love the heat, but these all thrive. Basil, amaranth, and papalo. Papalo isn't as well known. It's used widely in Mexican cuisine and thrives in the heat. It's often considered a summer cilantro. If you have spots in your yard with less than ideal sunlight and other plants won't grow there because they don't get enough sun, plant herbs. They're easy to grow because we cultivate them for their leaves. We're not asking them to flower and produce fruit, so they need less sunlight. That means they'll grow well in locations where other vegetables might struggle. That's why I've dedicated this bed to herbs. This is the shady spot in my yard. These herbs can tolerate partial shade. That means they get at least 3 to 4 hours of sun. Ginger and turmeric especially grow best with shade. Good drainage is essential, especially for Mediterranean herbs like lavender, thyme, rosemary, sage, and oregano. They are adapted to growing in dry, rocky, and well-drained soil. They don't like wet or waterlogged soil. That leads to root rot and other diseases. They need a spot where excess water can drain out quickly. That's why growing in a raised bed or a container is often a good idea. Here are some year-round tips if you're growing perennial herbs. Spring. This is a good time to add new perennial herbs to your beds. For existing plants, cut them back by about 1/3 and amend with compost. Summer. Don't prune or overwater. This allows them to go into summer dormancy. They're going into survival mode. That allows them to survive the extreme heat of summer. They probably won't look their best, and that's okay. Fall. This is the best time to add perennial herbs to your landscape. They have a long time before those hot summer temperatures come, and they'll be well established. Otherwise, fall looks a lot like spring. We're pruning back some of that damage from the summer and amending with compost. Winter. Reduce watering and harvest less. The plant will go a little bit dormant. This helps it withstand the cold temperatures and any frost events. Perennial herbs might suffer some frost damage on the leaves, but most perennial herb roots withstand our mild winters, even if we get a frost event or two. Here's how to care for annual plants throughout the season. Plant them at the beginning of their planting window and succession plant them through their season. This gives you a continuous supply of fresh herbs. Try different varieties of annual herbs. Some have a little bit different flavor and characteristics. There are so many different varieties of basil that grow amazingly well all through our hot summers. Try different types and see which ones you like. Harvest often throughout the season. When plants bolt, allow them to flower and go to seed. I will tell you why that's important later on. Grow herbs in containers. Choose pots that are at least 12 inches deep. Larger pots will allow perennial herbs to last longer in that container. Some families of herbs are invasive and do best planted in a pot so you don't get it spreading throughout your garden. The oregano and mint families are especially problematic. Grow those in a container. But they don't have to be invasive to grow well in containers. These herbs all grow well in containers. Some herbs produce many seeds that can drop and spread throughout the garden. If you don't want them to self-seed and pop up, harvest them before they drop and spread. These are herbs like garlic chives, dill, chamomile, cilantro, and fennel. Allow them to dry fully on the plant and then bag them up and put them in a paper sack to dry if you want to save seeds to eat or plant again. Don't over-fertilize herbs. Too much fertilizer promotes lush green growth at the expense of flavor. The herb's oils won't be as concentrated and it won't taste as good. Adding compost once or twice a year is plenty. Also, don't overwater herbs. That can lead to problems like root rot. Most herbs prefer slightly dry conditions, and that helps concentrate those essential oils. Pests rarely cause significant damage to herbs. On the contrary, herbs are essential for feeding, housing, and attracting beneficial insects and pollinators to your garden. Plant annual and perennial herbs all throughout your garden and allow them to flower and bolt at the end of the season. These flowers attract all kinds of beneficial insects. You'll often see all stages and generations of ladybugs and lacewings on your bolted cilantro, dill, and fennel. Attracting beneficial insects to your garden can be as simple as planting a few seeds. One of the best things about growing perennial herbs is they are ready for you to harvest all year long, and you don't have to preserve them. Don't forget to harvest and use them. Get in the habit of regularly using the annual herbs that are in season. They add flavor and nutrition to your cooking. During the summer, find lots of ways to use fresh basil. During cooler weather, keep your cilantro harvested. It will produce more. I often run out to the garden and harvest what I need for dinner or cooking. You'll have an abundance of herbs. Share with others. Once your neighbors know you have fresh herbs, they will be calling. We often take having access to fresh herbs for granted. Learn how to use herbs in your cooking, for tea, and for medicine. Harvest them regularly, even if you're not using them. Picking lightly all over encourages bushy growth. Avoid harvesting more than 1/3 of the plant, and aim to harvest just before flowering for the most flavorful herbs. While perennial herbs grow well year-round and are often best fresh from the garden, sometimes you might want to preserve them. There are different ways, and different methods are best for different herbs. Enjoy herbs like rosemary, thyme, lemongrass, ginger, and turmeric fresh from the garden. They're best fresh, and growing them means you have access year-round. To keep herbs fresh for a couple of days after harvesting, store them in a jar of water. This works perfectly for herbs like basil and cilantro. Drying herbs is simple and works well for many herbs. Use a dehydrator or hang them to dry. This is best for herbs like bay, chamomile, dill, thyme, lemon balm, lavender, marjoram, oregano, and rosemary. They dry well and retain much of their flavor. Freezing works well for basil, cilantro, parsley, and ginger. This is the easiest way to get maximum flavor from those herbs. And finally, freeze drying. This is the best method to get the most flavor and intensity and is closest to fresh. One year I made freeze-dried basil for all of my friends and neighbors for the holidays. It was a hit. Don't feel like you have to add all of these herbs all at once. Add a perennial or two to your yard or garden Experiment with growing different annual herbs. Learn how to grow and use those herbs and continue adding more. Let me know, which is your favorite herb to grow? I don't know the line. And add annuals there. And then I have to keep going. Okay. Do I need to do that again? And I forgot my last.